Nebula. Watch another brand new full-length companion video to this one in my ongoing Modern Conflict series that explains the entire course of the longest war in American history. The 20-year-long US invasion and occupation of Afghanistan between 2001 and 2021, along with 16 other full-length episodes with more than 5.5 hours worth of combined content covering over a dozen other major 21st century conflicts, all of which you can access by signing up for the CuriosityStream Nebula Bundle deal for less than $15 a year at curiositystream.com/real-life-lore. The United States of America is the most powerful empire that has ever existed in human history, without even being the absolute largest in terms of overall territory. No other empire has ever been as capable of so thoroughly enforcing its will across the rest of the planet. Economically, the United States has continuously remained the world's largest economy since the 1890s, and is the only country that has ended every single decade with a larger economy than it started with for the past 150 years. The US dollar is the primary reserve currency used by most of the world's nations. America's government is the second longest continuously run regime in the world. And despite making up just 5% of the contemporary human population, the United States controls around 30% of the entire planet's wealth and produces 20% of all global manufacturing. And complementing America's tremendous economic might is also her unprecedented military strength. The US military alone represents nearly 40% of all worldwide military spending. The US Navy represents half of the worldwide naval fleet. The United States controls more than 750 overseas military bases across every conceivable theater of the world, enabling America to attack any threat anywhere on the surface of the planet in less than 48 hours. And while there are many factors that contribute towards this unprecedented global power and influence of the United States, the biggest reason for it, and the true source from which all American power stems, is the fact that the geography and the geology of the North American continent itself is just insanely overpowered from a civilization building standpoint. In fact, it's so outrageously overpowered that it's not even really fair to any of Earth's other civilizational start points, and it was almost inevitable that any civilization that began where the United States did, regardless of people or ideology, would have eventually emerged as the dominant global superpower. So allow me to explain in depth why that's the case. To begin with, the core geographic reason of America's global power and the core of the North American continent itself is almost certainly the Mississippi River, and the vast basin that surrounds it, wedged in between the high Rocky Mountains in the west and the low Appalachian Mountains in the east, interconnecting with the Illinois, Ohio, Tennessee, Red, Arkansas, and Missouri rivers as well. Most of the tributary rivers that feed into this enormous system, spanning 1/3 of the entire continent, begin at relatively low elevations, which effectively means that the majority of the basin's rivers are calm and absent of any obstacles like rapids, and have therefore been easily navigable for thousands of years without the need for any advanced technology, expensive development, or infrastructure. The most important thing to understand about the Mississippi River itself is that it is the longest navigable river in the world, meaning that since time immemorial, anyone could essentially sail a boat carrying supplies or people from the Gulf of Mexico into the Mississippi's mouth and up more than 3,000 kilometers deep into the North American interior before hitting the river's only natural waterfall here, which, without coincidence, is exactly where the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul was settled. The navigable section of the Mississippi River from these waterfalls down to the delta in the Gulf of Mexico is more than 3 times the length of the Rhine in Europe, and 1/3 longer than even the Danube, Europe's second longest river. Navigable rivers like the Mississippi or the Rhine are tremendously valuable to generating economic activity because they are substantially cheaper to use as transportation of goods and people than land-based infrastructure. Roads and railways require not only high initial costs to construct, but high ongoing maintenance costs to keep them functioning and running as well. whereas rivers are already there and are basically just free to use.